Oh, are we sideways? Oh man. Of all the things we've had problems with today, we might be sideways. Let me just see how it's looking on the stream. I've set it for not let me change the orientation. Oh. Right. Let's get ourselves like this. There we go. Is that better? Everyone can hear me, hopefully. Okay. Better? Everyone can hear me. Gonna get a little echo of my voice coming back through there for a second. Okay. So this is now very different from how it was going to be. We're now streaming on my phone, which is why it's upright. And I'm sorry, guys, I hate that it's upright like that. But I think that's about as much as I can do to get it going. But at least we're live. Let me bring you slightly further forward so that we're. There we go. Whew. So yeah, I won't bore you with all the details, but I had troubles with a new system I was trying to use for streaming. I think I'm just going to switch over to like StreamYard or something like that and just do it like that if I try and do it with other computer. Plus all my Wi-Fi was causing problems, and I don't think that actually was anything to do with the stream. I think that was just an unlucky coincidence because my phone and everything went funny on the Wi-Fi at the same time. So yeah, but anyway, look, sorry about that, guys. Hopefully we're all good. We're all there. I can see quite a few of you guys in the chat already, which is great. Thank you for hanging around. I appreciate you guys sticking with me during the challenges. I've got it open on my laptop here as well, which is where we were going to be streaming from. But we're on the phone, so I've got you guys on the phone here, and I've also got you on the laptop so that I can see the comments a bit easier. Because on the phone here, they like spring past in the bottom. So I've just seen. So funny enough, something which I'll be honest, my Britishness, I hadn't realised. I say I hadn't realised. I didn't know it because I remember thinking it last year, but I hadn't registered this year that the 1st of July is an anniversary. That's not only the first day of the Battle of the Somme, it's also the first day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Which I've heard is quite a big thing on the other side of the Atlantic. So it's the first day of the anniversary of the first day of Gettysburg as well. And I joke, it's a place which I would love to get to. That is on my list. If I get across to the States, hopefully go spend a bit of time and go make some videos out there. It would take me a while to learn it. I know some about Gettysburg, but not very much. So I would have to do a whole load of learning to better make any half decent videos. Right. Anyway. The heat, the Wi-Fi is not used to it. Yeah, you're probably right. It could well be. It is hot here, guys. I don't know if you can see my face. It's, oh, goodness. So some of you guys who might live in more tropical climates than I do will think nothing of it, but it is, I think it hit 33 degrees here today, which is pretty hot. Somebody can tell me what that is in American, in Fahrenheit. I'm not even sure, but fairly hot. So right, let me just get the chat here filtered so it's not just showing me top chat. Get it to show me all of the live chat, so I'll make sure I don't miss anything. Luckily, my channel is not big enough like some of these other guys where the messages are flying past. I can pretty much keep everything on there. History War Cinema, my friend Marcel said he's been there. Yeah, he was in Gettysburg recently. Looked like he had an awesome trip. Yet again, making me think that I wanted to go. So let me just quickly fly back through and just make sure I didn't miss a few people coming in the hellos, because I saw a load of you came in earlier on as well. In fact, a couple of you had a whole big old chat while I was sorting all that out. That's good to see. Loafer, how you doing? Chris? James is in there. Marcel, History War Cinema. Dirk. JD, obviously, I saw in there. Who've we got? Paul, how you doing, Paul? I think I'm getting there down the bottom. Dirk, sorry if I missed you. Oh, it's going a bit now, but hey, John, hey, how you doing? Evening, thank you. Tristan, lest we forget. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, so look, so why are we here? First of July. So today, 1st of July 2025, is the 109th anniversary of the first day of the Battle of the Somme. There's always a temptation to say the anniversary of the Battle of the Somme because people often cling on to that first day of the Somme, but in reality, it went the actual battle went right through to November. So in reality, the battle was, I think, 13th of November was the last. Well, no, I know it was 13th of November was the last day of the Battle of the Somme. So it's the anniversary of the Battle of the Somme for the next few months, really. But today is the big day, and of course, the reason for that is that it started today, and of course, it was a real bloody day in terms of British casualties. More than 57,000 casualties, nearly 60,000 casualties. 20,000 of those were killed, and the vast majority of them were right at the beginning of the battle, in the first kind of hour or even actually 30 minutes of the battle. Some of those leading battalions, the guys who went over the top first, were just largely wiped out within the first like half an hour on the 1st of July, 109 years ago. So by this time of day on the 1st of July, the battle, or at least the first day of the battle, was largely done. It wasn't entirely a failure. In some sections, down in the southern section of the battlefront, we had success, took the objectives that we were aiming for down in places like Montauban and Mametz. And ultimately, we did break through the German line down in the south there, which I guess was the goal of the Battle of the Somme, and that's what leads to a lot of that conversation around, well, was it technically a success in some ways? Whereas, of course, in some sections, it was certainly a substantial failure. And why is it such a big thing, the Battle of the Somme? I think it's because it just lives in history for most British families, as do other parts of the First World War. Ypres, those of us who had family in the First World War, it would be very unlikely that any of them wouldn't have been through Ypres at some point. But the Battle of the Somme, there's almost a connection with it. Every family either has somebody who was in that battle, maybe a relative killed in that battle, maybe a relative killed on the first day, and if not, maybe you know somebody who had a relative that was in the battle, or maybe a relative killed on the first day. So it just lives so much in British history. Myself, my two great granddads, my two great grandfathers, they were both in the Battle of the Somme. One of them was there in the lead up, served with the Royal Field Artillery. And he was actually just down in the south, just near Mametz. He was there in the lead up, the week leading up to the first day of the Somme, with the artillery, putting that barrage down on the German positions at Mametz. My other great grandfather was with the Liverpools, the King Liverpool Regiment, 19th Battalion of the King Liverpools, but he actually landed in France in September 1916, so he was there after the first day. Wasn't there long, actually. He was too young to serve in the front lines. He lied about how old he was. Landed in France in September, and actually in December he was found out to be too young, largely because my great-great-grandfather wrote a letter to his commanding officer to say that he'd lied about his age, and told on him, basically. And he was removed from the front line because they'd introduced a policy by that stage where if you weren't 19, you weren't supposed to serve in the front line. Hundreds of guys still did, because they lied about how old they were. But some of them that got found out, like my great granddad, got removed, and so he came back to England. Doesn't mean he got off lightly. About 9 months later, when he was 19, he was shipped back out, and he was at Passchendaele in 1917 with the Monmouthshire Regiment by that stage, who had been transferred when he went back out to France. So lots of family relation to it. Let me just catch up a bit with some of the chat. Baron Flight, don't miss me, man. I wouldn't miss you. Don't worry about that. Richard, your uncle fell on the 1st of July. Wow. Oh, I visited his grave for you. Who was that, Richard? Just remind me the name. And there's a couple of different people who've like messaged me through Instagram and stuff and said, like, would I mind doing it? And I've tried to do that wherever I can. So I'm guessing that's probably It's probably going to be one of those. I just the name has slipped my mind. Is he in Overlers? Was it that one? The guy who I visited in Overlers for somebody? That might well have been yourself, Richard. That kind of casualty pile up, Tristan, yeah. Great granduncle from Wolverley was killed 17 at the Somme in February. Yeah, so even then, so February 1917, right? So that's after the official Battle of the Somme. But of course, the front lines were still there. 17, everyone's looking at Ypres and Passchendaele and thinking about the action up there. Well, there were still guys in the line, suffering casualties. There was still artillery fire would come over. There were still trench raids and stuff. So, there were casualties in that area. Right the way through. Richard, Percy Bingham at Overlers. There you go. I did remember. I couldn't remember the name, sorry, but I did remember it was at Overlers. Chris, was it supposed to relieve the French at Verdun? It was only supposed to be a diversion. Yeah, yes and no. No, it wasn't really supposed to be a diversion. So the Battle of the Somme was supposed to be a joint offensive. So an offensive with the British and French. And it still was a joint offensive with the British and French. But the French were supposed to take a much larger role in it. And in fact, they were kind of supposed to be the main part of the offensive, with the British in more of a supporting role. But the trouble was, in February 1916, the Germans attacked down at Verdun. So the plans for the Somme were in place by that stage, and the Germans attacked down in Verdun. What that then meant was that the French had to remove, a lot of their resources that they would have put into that Somme offensive down into the defence of Verdun. They had to hold the line down there. The French then kind of kept the pressure on the British to say, no, look, we're desperate for you guys to still push on with that Somme offensive to draw German troops away from Verdun. So by the time the battle went ahead, yeah, part of it was continued to aid the French with relieving some of that pressure down at Verdun, but it wasn't that the Somme was designed as a diversion away from Verdun. It kind of inadvertently became part of that because the Germans attacked in Verdun, if that makes sense. Ariane, I hope I said Ariane right. You'll visit Passchendaele tomorrow. Nice. That'll be lovely. A lovely trip, I'm sure. Paul, your uncle is on one of the panels at Thiepval. Okay, nice. October at the Schwaben Redoubt. Yeah, okay. So lots of fighting. So there you go. It's a great example. October, that fighting was continuing, heavily. In the south. So in the southern section of the Somme, by the time you got even to like mid-July, we'd kind of, the Commonwealth forces pushed through and got into that kind of area known as almost like the horseshoe of woods. And I've done some videos on some of that, like Delville Wood, for example, where the South Africans went into action. But in some sections of the line, the lines hadn't moved that much. So October 1916, yep, still fighting in that area around the Schwaben Redoubt. Up in the north, across like Redan Ridge and places like that, and Serre, the lines hadn't moved at all since the first day. So the fighting across Redan Ridge in November 1916 was across the same piece of land that had been attacked on the 1st of July 1916. There'd been no gains in between. Whereas if you look right down in the south, past like Montauban and those areas, by the time we got to the end of the Battle of the Somme, then on beyond that, the fighting was way beyond the place where the front lines had been on the 1st of July. Getting right out and kind of pushing sort of east of those woods. Where have I... Let me see if I had some stuff come past. James, you think your great-great-uncle is on Thiepval. Okay, cool. Well, if you're not sure, you can find out on the Commonwealth Graves Commission website. If you go on there, they have all the casualties on Thiepval are listed on there, so you should be able to see. I'm guessing there's potential that you could have more than one A.T. Lee, because Lee is not a hugely uncommon surname. But equally, if you know he was a rifleman, I'm guessing maybe you might know like which regiment he was with, which hopefully would narrow it down for you. But it's well worth having a look on there, because if he was lost, if he was missing and lost on the first day of the Battle of Flers-Courcelette, then yeah, he is very likely on Thiepval Memorial. Ragadish, I like your name, Ragadish. Can I say something about why the artillery bombardment failed to destroy the German lines? Yes. Were the shells defect in some way? Yes, a lot of them were. Were the fortifications dust too? You're answering some of this for me, man. Yeah. So the plan was to launch a substantial week-long, slightly more than a week-long bombardment on the German front lines, and that was designed to do several things. A, to destroy the actual German lines themselves, kill a lot of Germans, destroy their defensive positions, and also to destroy the barbed wire that sat in front of those German positions, because of course that was going to be a really key sticking point. If guys got out there and the barbed wire was all across, they wouldn't even be able to get to that German trench. Now, it's done in a couple of different ways. They largely used a lot of shrapnel shells, artillery shrapnel shells, to try and blow that barbed wire to bits, and then also some shrapnel and also some high explosive shells into the German positions to try to destroy those. So several things happened. First of all, what they weren't quite aware of was the depth of those German fortifications, and in a lot of cases they weren't underneath the front line position. A lot of the German troops were actually in the second line, or in deep dugouts underneath the second line position. So that meant that a lot of them were hidden away safely from those bombardments. Now, of course, it doesn't mean that there weren't a lot of German casualties from those bombardments, because of course there still were, but they were largely hidden away in those deep dugouts, and they had rehearsed again and again and again that when that bombardment stopped, they would be up, they would be out of their dugouts, they would have their machine guns set up, and they would be ready to defend their positions within about 10 to 15 minutes. And they'd rehearse that again and again and again. The German guys defending the lines at the Somme had been there for a long old time, more than a year in some cases. The other thing that happened is the shrapnel was not too effective on the barbed wire. So that meant that when the attack went in, you had a situation where there were a lot more Germans still there than we thought there were going to be. They had their defensive positions set up very quickly, and when those guys, those poor guys, got out across no man's land to the German lines, in a lot of places the barbed wire was still intact. And so you ended up with guys trying to get through gaps in barbed wire, which means you then got guys bunching together to get through that gap. You know, an efficient German machine gunner just aims his gun on that gap in the wire, and you can imagine the carnage that then ensued, and that did in so many places along the line. Some of the mines were ineffective, again, because of the Germans being under the second line. You go to Hawthorne Ridge, a great example. You know, that was designed to blow up the front line position of the Germans, but so many of those German defenders were actually in dugouts underneath the second line. So when that mine blew up, bearing in mind it went up at 7:20 in the morning, 10 minutes before the main bulk of the attacks went in, it basically gave all the Germans a 10-minute warning to get forwards and set up their defensive positions. And what did we just say? They'd rehearsed again and again and again to have their defensive positions set up in 10 to 15 minutes. Well, that mine goes off at 7:20. We're giving them a 10-minute warning. You know, they had their defensive positions set up, they defended that mine ridge, and then caused havoc across that area. Sunken Lane, Beaumont Hamel, an area that we've talked a lot about. And in fact, an area that I've edited a video on earlier today. UVF regiment at Thiepval were more successful. UVF. Oh, the Ulsters. Yeah. So the Ulster Division, 36 Ulster Division, who attacked down in the kind of area of Thiepval, to where, if you guys know, the Somme is where the Ulster Tower is now, along the edge of Thiepval Wood. Yeah, they did have some success there. They captured the German positions and held them for a period of time. The problem was they. And I've done a bit of a video on this, but they created a scenario where they pushed forward and captured the German positions, but the attacks on either side had failed. So that meant they were in kind of a bulge in the line where they still had defenders, attacking back at them head on, and also to both sides. And that just meant that inevitably in the end they had to pull back, not quite to their own front line. They still managed to hold some of the position, but they largely had to pull right back to the beginning. Dirk says, Dirk, welcome to member. I don't know much about live streaming. Does that just mean you became a member, Dirk? I'm really grateful that you did. I think that's what that's telling me. Thank you, man. I appreciate that. If you were a member already and you didn't just become one, then congratulations for whenever it was that you did. But I think that's telling me that you just became a member now, which I appreciate. So look, any Somme related questions, please fire them into the questions box like you guys have already done, and I'll talk a little bit about some of what I've been doing lately, because we've got some Somme videos coming over the next few weeks on the channel. I've got my water in like this thermos cup because it keeps it cold. Oh my goodness. Oh, Dirk, you're new, man. Thank you, man. I appreciate you joining up. Thank you. My favourite battle. There's a question. It feels like such a cliche answer saying the Somme, but you know what? There is something about the Somme, and the guys who I've visited the Somme with, some of them are in the chat to talk about this when we're talking about it. There is something about the Somme that just draws you back to it. You know, I've been all around Ypres, Passchendaele. I've been down to Verdun. I guess there's naturally a slightly lesser connection with Verdun because it was not a British battlefield, it was a French battlefield. But I've been to Loos and places like that. I do find the Battle of Loos fascinating because in so many ways it's an unknown battle, or it's a battle that's not talked about very much. And I had to do a load of learning and research when I made my series of videos about it. And in doing so, I just read about it and listened to podcasts and all sorts. So I feel really drawn to the Battle of Loos because it was really interesting learning about it. But I think if I had to pick one, I would fall back into the Somme. I just find the Somme fascinating to go and walk, and there are so many places along that Somme front line where you can really feel that weight of what happened there. The weight of history, I suppose it would be. You asked me that because Beaumont Hamel keeps drawing you back. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess to be more specific, a place which, funny enough, I was with a group of guys on the Somme a few weeks ago and I was chatting about this. A place that I always find draws me back is the Danzig Alley Cemetery, the British cemetery there. And the reason for that, so when I first got into the Battle of the Somme and started researching it, one of the more famous stories that I learnt about was Captain Charlie May and his diaries. And, you know, if you guys don't know the story of Captain Charlie May, look on my channel, I've done videos about it. But I really found that story interesting, and Charlie May's grave is at Danzig Alley Cemetery. So I went to Danzig Alley Cemetery. I then went back to the Somme a second time and I visited it again. And then I was there with a friend of mine, Chris, just vlogging through history, and he'd acquired the medals of a guy. At the time we didn't know where he was buried, but Chris had acquired the medals of this guy and was doing a bit of research on him. Next thing you know, Chris messages me, God, you're not going to believe this, Rob. Of all the cemeteries on the Somme, this guy is buried in Danzig Alley Cemetery. So, oh, that's a coincidence. So I went back there with Chris and put a photo. I feel like it's Walter Lloyd is the soldier, and Chris put a photo there. That photo is, well, I'm hoping it's still there today. It was still there as of 2 weeks ago when I was last at the Somme. And that drew me back there. And then I was looking up soldiers from my hometown. So my hometown is a place called Cobham in Surrey, not where I live now, but where I grew up. And I was researching some of the guys on the War Memorial in Cobham, and I found a guy by the name of William White who grew up in near enough the next road to where I grew up. And I thought, oh wow, that's interesting, let me look into him. And lo and behold, where was he buried? Danzig Alley Cemetery. So again, it drew me back there. Then the village I live in now, I was doing some research. In fact, I'm still doing research on all the guys who live in the village where I am, or who were from the village I live in now. Looking through all of those, found a guy who lived literally in the next road to where I live now. Started researching him, couldn't believe it. Danzig Alley Cemetery, and there is something that just keeps drawing me back to Danzig Alley. So if I had to pick one place that I guess is almost like a special place to me, it would be Danzig Alley Cemetery on the Somme. James, so James, I kind of answered your question there as well. Do I have a favourite memorial or cemetery? I guess it would be Danzig Alley. In terms of the memorials, the Welsh Memorial is quite cool down near Mamet. The red dragon with the barbed wire. That's a slightly different one, right? So that's quite cool. There's a memorial to the Liverpool Pals in the centre of Montauban, one of which is the 19th King Liverpool's, which is my great-grandfather was part of them. So that one as well, I suppose. Bragadish, you really like the video I did at Lewes. Yeah, that landscape. So a lot of people assume the Somme is flat, but in reality it's not. It's actually like rolling hills. And you go to Lewes, and my goodness, that is a flat battlefield. If you go to the Lewes Memorial, and so there's like a viewing platform, and you can look in every direction, it is just flat in every direction. You can see, miles. Almost at ground level, it's that flat, and it's crazy. I mean, those guys attacking across those bits of land, goodness, no wonder there were so many casualties. And there were an awful lot of casualties at Lewes as well. S Bishop, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your first name. I do know you. Is it Stephanie or something like that? I can't remember. But do I ever feel overwhelmed at the horrendous number of who died? Yeah, absolutely I do. Some of those places, sometimes when you've been to them a few times, you get used to the feeling, and so you don't necessarily find it as overwhelming. But the first time I was at Serres, and if you go to the Sheffield Memorial Park at Serres, you can walk out to the Sally. Sorry, I knew it was Sally. Man, I'm annoyed with myself. Apologies. You can walk out from the Sheffield Memorial Park out to the Queen's Cemetery, and when you get out there to the cemetery, you are near enough at the point, which is pretty much the furthest any of those guys got. And when you walk out there, you know you've just left what was the British front line. You know you're walking across what was no man's land. And then when you get, after such a short walk, you get to the place that is near enough about as far as any of those guys got, it does give you a feeling. And you can, and people have all different views on what that feeling is, right? You know, some people will say it might be a religious thing, some people might say it's a ghost thing. I think it's probably kind of feeling the weight of history, and almost like your brain having a realization of where you are and what happened there. But I absolutely have had that feeling there. I definitely had that feeling at the Thiepval Memorial. In fact, the first time I walked the Thiepval Memorial, I did feel a bit of emotion. In fact, I think that was whilst I was filming a video. If you guys want to go back to my old video, you'll see that there. Michaela, hey, oh Michaela, yeah, I remember you well, Michaela. Yeah, thank you. So I was out on the Somme actually with my dad. So myself and my dad. My dad is the reason I really got into World War I in the first place. He always had an interest in it. You know, would talk a little bit about it. You know, got me watching films and TV shows, and World War II as well. So you know, the first time I watched Band of Brothers, I watched it with my dad. First time I went to the Somme, I went with my dad. And so I was doing another trip with my dad, and we were at the Somme, and I pulled up outside Serres Road number 1, and I was chatting to my dad, and a lady approached me and said, "Oh, I recognise your voice from History in Your Hand," and that was Michaela. So Michaela, thank you so much for saying hello. I appreciated you doing that. I've met several of you. It's crazy. I find it weird being recognised when I'm out and about at these places, but I suppose when I'm World War One battlefields, I'm probably more likely to meet some of you guys, because people who tend to be out there tend to be people who are interested in World War One. People who are interested in World War One would have been more likely to see my channel, right? So it makes sense. But the last couple of times I've been out there, I've met 3, 4, 5 of you guys, which has been really nice to see, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying hello, Michaela. I'm glad you had a great time. Really good to see you out there enjoying it. And I was the thing that pleased me the most is you said that you'd managed to get the best out of some of the places that you'd visited by watching my videos, and that meant a lot to me, so thank you. Have I considered using a drone to film the battlefield? Yes, I have, and I have before. I used to have a drone, so I'm a photographer by trade. I think a lot of you guys already know that. I had a drone. I wasn't really using it ever for work that much, and I didn't really think there was going to be as much need for it with YouTube. At the time, I was doing a photography YouTube channel. Sold my drone, probably just at the wrong time, because it's just as I was really starting my history YouTube stuff. So I need to buy another drone, and I will buy another drone, and yes, I will definitely use it to enhance my videos, because I've seen the way people like Chris, JD, my friend Marcel, Sander, their channels are definitely enhanced by some of the drone footage. Charlie, good evening. Hey Charlie. Paul, thank you. I appreciate that you enjoy them, and I'm glad you find them informative. Look, I try my best to share what I know, right? I say several times on this channel that I don't consider myself to be an expert. I consider myself a guy who knows some stuff, and probably knows more than the average person about World War One, about the Somme, and I try and share what I know, and I try and go and discover new places. I was talking to Paul Reed, who runs the Old Front Line, a couple of weeks ago, and I've learned so much from Paul Reed. But by the way, anyone who doesn't know Paul Reed, he runs the Old Frontline podcast. There's also a YouTube channel, the Old Frontline. If you like anything that I do, you should absolutely go and join and subscribe to his channel, and make sure you get on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you like your podcasts, and get onto the Old Frontline podcast, because my goodness, you'll learn a lot from those, and I certainly have. He said something to me about my channel, which I thought, yeah, you know what, that sums up what I'm trying to do. He said it feels like you're watching somebody going through a journey of discovery, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do. I try and go to places, I kind of take you with me, I show you what I can see, I tell you what I know about the place, and quite often if I'm going somewhere I don't know much about, I'll try and research a lot about it before I go there. I don't turn up to these places and try and claim, hey, I'm an expert on this place, let me show you it. I go there and I talk to you about the place, and a lot of time I'm learning as I do that alongside with you. Charlie, looking forward. Yeah, so the Thiepval series. I've put out 1 episode of it. I've recorded 3 episodes of it. Although I have got some mic issues with a couple of them. You guys would have seen it at the start of that first one. My mic failed on a couple of clips, but I think I can edit around it. So I should still have 3 episodes. 3 episodes of that filmed so far, and when I'm back at the Somme next time in a month or so, a couple of months, I'll film some more episodes of it. So the idea being that we'll have episodes of stories from Thiepval. I'm just going to try and share some of the stories that I've got, or that I've researched in my stack of books over there behind me, and hopefully share some of those with you. John, as a Scouser, the Liverpool Pals Memorial holds a special place in your heart. Yeah, man, absolutely. Look, so many Liverpool guys, local Liverpool guys. I said my great-grandfather actually wasn't from Liverpool. He was from Manchester. Actually joined up with the Manchester Regiment. But for whatever reason, like many guys, got posted to a different regiment by the time he was out in France. And he arrived in France as a Mancunian in the 19th Battalion of the King's Liverpool Regiment, and later in the Monmouthshires, which is Welsh. So he got bounced around a bit, as did a lot of guys. That was very normal, especially towards the end of the war. Sean, how you doing? Man, don't be sorry. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Someone asked me something about tanks, didn't they? What did I miss about that? Oh, what did I think about the tank? Well, I mean, look, tanks changed the war in loads of ways. You imagine being a German in a front line for the first time and seeing a tank coming your way. And I don't just mean the fear like we would feel from seeing a tank, because we would look and think, oh my goodness, that's a tank. These are guys who hadn't seen a tank before. Imagine hearing that noise and looking and seeing one of those coming. I mean, my goodness. So the psychological effect that it had must have been huge. But it changed the war, right? They were unsuccessful in a lot of ways in the first attack. Loads of them failed. Loads of them didn't even get to their jump off positions, but loads of them were effective as well. And what it gave was a way of attacking across no man's land with a tank, with infantry and support. So we talked about barbed wire, or the, shrapnel not affecting barbed wire in the right way. Well, a tank can drive through barbed wire, so you can see the way, one of the many ways in which it affected warfare. What was that about Mehmet? Missed a couple of comments here. You read that Mehmet is the only original wood on the Somme where the public can walk. I know Delville is a park now. Is this the case? Only original wood. So I mean, no. You can walk. So some of the wooded areas are on private land. So some of I don't know that much about the land ownership, but I think a massive chunk of Trones Wood, I think, is on private land. I think maybe some of Highwood might be private land as well. Delville Wood you can go and walk, yes. Metz Wood you can certainly walk in some of it at least. But I'm pretty sure you can in some of the other bits as well. When you say original wood, I don't know if you mean like the original trees are still there. If you go to Delville Wood, there's a tree, the last tree, which is supposedly the only original tree that survived the battle. You can imagine most of these wooded areas that got heavily fought over got blown to bits. Chris, what do I think about the build-up, planning, and the quantity of infrastructure? Yeah, funny enough, I was talking to someone about this the other day, who kind of said, like, all the generals should have been charged with crimes and all this kind of stuff. I think it's very easy for us to have that kind of feeling in hindsight. I think the thing we have to remember is, I don't think some of the generals certainly made decisions that they knew would cause a lot of casualties. And in some cases, yeah, sure, they might have made those decisions a little recklessly. And certainly after the battle, there were a couple of the generals, Snow up near Gommecourt is a great example, who said some pretty poor stuff, like it went wrong due to a lack of fighting spirit, I think is what Snow said up near Gommecourt. But I also don't believe that all these generals knew full well that it was going to be carnage and said crack on anyway. I think they genuinely thought it was going to work. I think the things that they thought were going to have been a success, I think they believed they'd destroyed a lot of the German positions. I think they believed they'd destroyed a lot of the barbed wire. The thing that's tough to understand is that there's plenty of reports of guys saying, well, no, I can see the barbed wire, it's still there. But I guess when you get to that stage, what do you do? Do you go, well, yeah, okay, we can see some of that barbed wire still there, but do we call off the entire thing as a result of that, or do we attack anyway? So I get it, right? It's a real conundrum. I think it's very easy for us to judge it in hindsight in a different sort of way. But the planning and the quantity of infrastructure leading up to that battle. Just think of the numbers of men. Well, feeding all those men, giving them all water, enough equipment for all those men, enough shells for all of those guns. The amount of infrastructure and the planning is tremendous. At some point I want to do some videos on all that. Get back right behind the Somme and do some videos on that kind of stuff. Paul, my videos were a big help in Flanders. Thank you, and I appreciate that. You're going through the Somme stuff? Awesome, nice. David, Huntsville, Alabama. Hello, man. Alan, you just joined. Thank you for joining. Motorhead 19. Oh yeah. So funnily enough, the video I've been editing today is, I'm just talking about Loafer Sheffield's comment about Jeffrey Malin's cinematography. The video I've been doing today has been all about that. So I say editing today. I filmed it a couple of weeks ago. It's a video all about following in Jeffrey Malin's footsteps. So anyone who doesn't know, Jeffrey Malins is the cinematographer who created the films, that famous footage of the guys in Sunken Lane before the attack, the famous footage of the Hawthorne Ridge mine exploding and then guys attacking across that piece of land. And I've done a video where I walk in his footsteps, we stand in the same places where he stood, we look at the landscape as it looks today compared to what it looked like in his footage. I found it really interesting to make. I hope you guys will find it interesting to watch as well. You will see that. In fact, if I get my act together and edit it in time, you might see it this Thursday. From Els is a good word, and you can see. Oh yeah. You know what? I've not been in there yet, but yes, I'm aware that you can see some of the bunkers in From Els. If the Somme had, yeah, so that's a great point, Charlie. Yeah, if the Somme hadn't happened, and therefore there'd been no requirement for the Germans to have to reinforce some areas of the Somme, and they'd been able to throw everything they had at Verdun, yeah, it could have been totally different. Because if the Germans had broken through those lines at Verdun, that could have enabled them to roll up the whole line from the south there. So yeah, it could have been a massive change. Dirk, keep on doing the same thing knowing it does not work. Right, interesting, Dirk, that you've said this. So yeah, so that's a real common conception that people have, and that's like the old Blackadder joke, right? We kept doing the same thing again and again. And yeah, sure, look, we did the same thing again and again in a couple of occasions, like on the first day we did. You know, if you go to that area around Newfoundland Park, first wave went in, got decimated, second wave went in, we called up the reserves, we put the reserves in, and they were lost as well. So yeah, in that sense it did, but in the wider battle we didn't. We absolutely took our learnings from that. You know, the learnings that we took from the attacks in July 1916 compared to then the things we did differently in November 1916. You look at that same piece of land, 51st Highland Division captured all those German positions in that area at Y Ravine, which is in the area of Newfoundland Park. You know, and how did they manage to? Well, they did it because we'd taken a lot of learnings from July. You know, we identified that the shrapnel shells hadn't destroyed the barbed wire, so we used a lot more high explosive shells to make sure the barbed wire was destroyed, which it was. We worked out that the German dugouts hadn't been destroyed, so we used higher explosive artillery shells to try to crush those German dugouts. That was more effective. We also developed the technique of a creeping barrage at the Somme, which was used in that area in November. So again, so we took learning. So actually, no, we didn't really do the same thing again and again. We did learn from it, and we did change. Yeah, Sean, you're right. Different mindset as well. The mindset is one of the things that I find so interesting when it comes to especially the letters that the guys wrote home. You know, guys who wrote letters on the 30th of June, the night before the attack, who wrote things like, you know, I know I might die. I'm okay with it. I just hope I'm brave enough to attack well. You know, I hope I'm brave enough to lead my men into the attack. You know, their mindset was, yeah, I might get killed. I'm okay with it, so long as I do the job well. And, you know, that mindset's tough to understand. And look, that mindset still exists in modern day military, right? Of course it does, you know. And not even just the military, you know, we have plenty of guys who do jobs all around the world who go into dangerous situations, you know, police forces, all sorts, who know they're putting themselves in situations where they could be hurt, and the mindset is they do it anyway, and they hope they do it well enough. But that mindset at that time, with guys so young, I talked about Paul Reed's podcast. He talks about, I think, is it Eric Heaton with the Middlesex who attacked at Beaumont Hamel, and in his podcast he reads the letter that he wrote home, and the content of that letter is all about, you've been such great parents to me. I hope that I'm brave enough to lead my men into this attack. Their worry isn't that they might get hurt. Their worry is, I know full well I might get hurt. In spite of that, I hope I'm brave enough to carry on. And that mindset is in these guys who are 18, 19 years old is crazy, right? Crazy. Do I think PAL's battalions were a good idea or inevitable disaster? Great question. I guess a bit of both, right? Because they had all the positives that they were designed for. They created a situation where guys had this massive level of camaraderie, and we all go together, and everyone in my street's joining up, so I'm going to as well. Everyone in my workplace is joining, so I want to as well. So yeah, they had all that. They had all that. They had all that sort of feeling of camaraderie, which was all the positive side to the PALS battalions. Of course, the bad bit about the PALS battalions is exactly what happened. Places like Accrington is probably one of the famous stories, right? Where almost an entire generation of young men from that town got wiped out. You imagine if suddenly almost every man from your town between the age of like 18 and 30, or nearer 40 even, is just gone. I mean, it's crazy, and that's what happened. And of course, that was the disastrous side to it. John, have I ever considered becoming a battlefield guide? Yeah, yes and no. I guess, yeah, you know what, look, I think I'd love to be a battlefield guide. I've done some battlefield guiding with like people who I know, but I wouldn't really consider that quite as such like a I don't know. I guess in answer, yeah, I'd love to be a battlefield guide. Maybe I'll try and do something more with that in the future. Oh, so here we go. So my friend Marcel was saying exactly what I just said about that mindset and how people still have it today. It's a yeah, they go. It's a job these guys and Marcel knows this much better than I do, but a job that these guys are trained to do, and they know full well the risk, right? So yeah, absolutely. Paul, you're heading off to bed, man. I understand that. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Captain Charlie May. Presumably he didn't self-censor. No. So the officers' letters certainly had a bit more flexibility than like your average private. But they still were subject to censorship. Charlie May's letters, a lot of his were actually written into his diary rather than letters sent home. I'm sure he wrote letters home too, but a lot of his letters and the ones that have been published now were actually written into his diaries. So slightly different from a letter being sent home, I suppose, but still. Yeah, sure. Sean just made a great point. Is I think in the modern day military, the deaths are tragic, right? If you see and in fact I was over in Brookwood, and there are some more modern day Commonwealth graves in Brookwood, guys who were killed in recent conflicts like Afghanistan or Iraq, or maybe one or the other, I'm not exactly sure which, and those are just as tragic, right? Just as tragic. But I think the mindset now, I don't think it would be deemed acceptable to any military force, certainly a Western military force, to have 20,000 deaths in a day, 57,000 casualties. And I'm sure that Rawlinson, who was in charge of the Fourth Army on the first day of the Somme, he didn't go into that thinking, well, I'm probably going to have 60,000 casualties. I'm cool with that. His predictions were a lot less, right? At one stage, I think even midway through the first day, I think they predicted 20,000 casualties. 3 times that much was the reality. But the mindset of that level of loss was different. It was, as Sean has said, considered to be much more acceptable than it ever would be now. And one death is tragic, right? It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 50,000, it's still tragic. But on that level, it's just crazy. Um, here we go. So I'm just catching up with some of the comments here. My favourite museum? Cool, as a question. I like the Hoog Crater Museum, just near Ypres. That's really cool. I'm funny with museums. I tend to like museums where I just get to see some cool stuff, rather than like the kind of big displays, if that makes sense. Very symbolic. You've got flares and challengers firing. Oh, wow. My great-grandmother lost her middle son, I guess that is, Peter Crozier, to wounds. 15th of April. Oh, okay, up by Calais. Yeah, so loads of guys, right? Often those forgotten casualties of the first day of the Somme, who were wounded on 15th of April in this case, but, guys who might have survived the day and then died sometimes weeks, sometimes years later of the effects caused by their wounds. But yeah, tragic. And her eldest son, wow. God, that is tough. Oh, okay. She banned saying their names in front of her. Okay. Wow. Yeah, a lot of families dealt with that kind of grief in different ways, right? And look, who knows, right? I can't imagine how I would deal with that if you had a a son go off and killed in war. It's tough to imagine. Hill 62, yeah. Hill 62 is a cool museum. Well, and then the trenches they have out the back, that's impressive. What do I think of the German defensive tactics? Both sides of the wire, yeah? Yeah, I mean, they knew that piece of land, right? So the German guys who had been there, in a lot of cases, had been there since the winter of 1914 into 15. So they knew that ground like so well. They knew the distances, they knew the ranges, they knew, they probably knew the altitudes, they knew, where the land sloped up or down, and so it enabled them to be able to defend in that way. And plus they'd rehearsed it, so that ability to be in position, ready to defend, their machine guns were set up in ever such a way where they could create like interlocking fire. So a lot of the machine gunners weren't necessarily firing directly out in front of them. A lot of them were firing at an angle across no man's land. Then you would have another guy further down who would fire the other way, so you'd have like interlocking fields of fire to cover a whole area. Very similar tactics used in the defences at the beaches and on D-Day, for example. Firing kind of down the end of a beach rather than straight out into it. Salisbury Plain, yeah, I want to get there to Salisbury and do a whole video about those training trenches. I've definitely got that in my plans, maybe even in the next couple of months, because I'm going to try and use this summer to film a load of content around the UK. Did they know about germs in World War One? Yeah, absolutely they did, yeah. Yeah, look, germs so illness was a huge killer in the First World War, especially towards the end. The flu, Spanish flu especially. So yeah, they knew about flu. Yeah, they knew about influenza. They knew about the reality of getting sick. Of course, they didn't have the ability to deal with it as well as we do now. So many guys died of flu that we would have treated in a day or two here with maybe a little bit of antibiotics or something. It was, of course, different back then. John, you're marshalling the Ypres rally at Zillebeek. Oh, wow. Oh, nice. Nice camera I have behind me. Yeah, so I think you probably mean this one. So That's actually not a real camera. That's like a model of a camera. But yes, it's a model of a medium format camera. Most of my cameras are in that big case there or in my bag down here. If you're interested in cameras, my main camera, which I film a lot of my stuff on, is a Canon R6. A lot of the stuff where I'm talking to the camera, I actually use an Osmo Action 3 by DJI. I moved to that recently because I just found it so much more versatile rather than the big camera. I have some other cameras too. I've got an old 7D, I've got a 1DX, I've got various other cameras I use for work. A lot of my work is sports photography, so I need different cameras for that. Freaky fact. Training camp in Sheffield was home to Sheffield City Pals Battalion. In World War II, they used it as a prisoner of war camp. Yeah, wow. So another place I've got to add to my list, right? Oh, wow, Charlie, that's a cool project to have been involved in. Trench renovation at April's Place in Champs-Élysées. Wow, man, that's cool. Barren flights, the question. So the Hindenburg line was so professional and strong. How did we come to defeat it? Yeah, great question. And look, that's probably, I haven't done any videos on the Hindenburg line yet. That probably will be something which I will do hopefully soon. But look, I guess rather than doing a 10-minute spiel, I guess the simple answer is they developed the tactics we talked about earlier. You know, they realized the importance of high explosive artillery. They realized the importance of destroying barbed wire before you attacked it with infantry. And the Hindenburg line was a serious, you're talking fields of barbed wire. You know, tanks were much more heavily used by that stage again, which made a big difference. So really it's a combination of all the tactics that have been developed over the course of the earlier part of the fighting to then move in to take some of that Hindenburg line in 1917. Not an easy task though, still thousands of casualties in doing it. It's not like they just kind of went in and took it. Oh wow, Charlie, yeah, your family certainly had a tough time of it in the war. Regards to the taking of Byzantine Ridge and the failure to pursue and take Highwood, as it was found to be empty of German troops, would have had a huge impact on us. So would it have had a huge impact on the Somme campaign? No, I don't necessarily know if it would have done. I guess because we still moved through that area, you know, and took a lot of that kind of ground. So yeah, certainly there were some tactical errors down there. There were lots of, I mean, that whole southern section of the Somme, there were lots of tactical errors right back to the first day. You know, there's a lot of argument that says, well, if we had just exploited breaking through that line and really pushed through then and there, 1st of July, 2nd of July, maybe we could have rolled up the whole German line. And yeah, maybe we could have done. But we didn't. And ultimately, we still pushed through and captured ground in the south down there. So I don't think it necessarily affected the whole battle, no. Oh wow, I hadn't clocked the surname. So Crozier, yeah, is that oh yeah, is that the guy who, like, the senior general had the same surname and like told his family, don't worry, I'm gonna look after him, and then was the guy who ultimately signed his death warrant for being shot at dawn? I need to look that story up. I feel like that's in a Paul Reed Old Frontline podcast somewhere, that story. I hadn't clocked the name. Wow, if that's quite a big story, Charlie. If that's part of your family, if you haven't, I'd urge you in that case, if you haven't seen it, go and I think it's the episode at that Paul's done about Ocean Villas. I think. Yeah, there you go. It is that story. Wow. So, Ben, if you haven't heard that podcast, make sure you go check it out. You'll find that really interesting. Might have lost. John, have I considered adding what 3 words reference to help amateurs find places? Yeah, good shout. That could be something I could do. Yeah. Any surprise finds, munitions, etc. Oh yeah, absolutely. So just recently, I was at the Verdun Ridge cemeteries, and there was a huge pile. In fact, I think it went all around social media. I saw it in lots of places. Some of you guys might have seen it. But there was a huge high explosive shell, and then a whole pile of hand grenades there, which I stayed fairly clear of. I did take some photos of it though, but yeah, that was pretty serious. Brass hats in no man's land. Nice. Right, so look, we're getting into an hour here. I'm conscious it's pretty late for some of you guys, so if you've got any pressing questions, please feel free to fire those into the comments, and I will try and address them before we finish up. Do me a favour, guys, anyone who's watching now, if you haven't hit the like button on the video, I would appreciate it if you did hit the thumbs up for me, just because it helps the video, and I'll leave it on the channel for a while, and people might watch it afterwards, and it tells the YouTubery that the live stream was okay. So if you thought it was okay, do me a favour and hit that little thumbs up button for me. Man, don't worry, Charlie. You haven't filled the chat. Anyone can put something in the chat. You putting your messages in doesn't stop anyone else. Don't worry about that. Marcel's great at ham. Yeah. So I've been on the I think we were on the Verdun battlefields with myself and Sean, with our friend Marcel, who found something and he didn't realise what he'd found at the time. And all the rest of us were very quick to go, no, Marcel, don't touch that. So that could have been a dangerous moment. Cheers, Charlie. Thank you for doing that. Sally, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, Sally. Thank you. Good night to you as well. Cool, I think that probably does us, guys. We're an hour in. If you do have other questions that you wanted to ask me that you didn't get to, look, stick them in the comments and I'll come back to this and I'll try and answer the questions in the comments. I'm going to try and go, I mean, we went live a month ago. We're going live today. I'll try and go live again in a few weeks' time, so maybe we'll try to keep rolling, and maybe we'll get like a monthly live stream going. A million Blackadder quotes to read through yet. World War II. I'm not sure which author that is, Loafer. I don't know. Raggedish from Sweden. Thank you for watching, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, John. Baron Flights, thank you, man. I did okay. Thank you. Alan, thank you. Charlie, man, it's awesome you're getting out there. Oh yeah, I think that is. John's just said Yorkshire Trench. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that is Yorkshire Trench. Oh, Spike Milligan, it was. Okay, cool. Nice. Right, guys, I think that'll probably do us. Thank you very much for watching. And listen, once again, I appreciate all of you guys who support me on the channel, especially those of you guys. I mean, Dirk just recently joined as a member, especially you guys who are members. If you're in my Patreon, which I know there's a couple of people I've seen in the comments who are on my Patreon page, so a special thank you to you. You guys help me out much more than you probably realize. YouTube, or certainly a YouTube channel of my size, doesn't make a load of money, so that helps me massively to be able to carry on producing these videos. So you guys who are on my Patreon, thank you so much. If you're not on my Patreon, feel free to check it out. It's linked in the description of all my videos. But Patreon aside, just commenting, watching, joining live streams like this helps me out a huge amount, and I really appreciate all of you guys for doing that. So thank you very much, and I will see all of you very soon. You'll have a video hopefully Thursday, and then every week from there on. Hopefully we will never miss a week. and if I do, there'll be a live stream. So there you go. Right, guys, thanks so much. Good night. See you soon.